Hello. Welcome back to another day of reading with us. I'm Valerie Monroe, and I am Bookwormy, and we are so glad to see you, and we are glad that the sun is shining into this room. It's nice when it's a sunny day. It certainly is. It's still a little cold to read outside today, so we're just going to read in here with the sun's beams coming in on us. Sounds like a great idea. So if you remember from yesterday, let's talk about yesterday. Okay. Yesterday, Brogden had said that he had a plan for keeping Maggie safe and helping to solve the problem of Mackie and Simp, the two guys who want to hunt for her and possibly, put her in a laboratory or who knows what. All they care about is selling her for money. So this chapter is a little tricky, and I think it's better actually that I'm reading it to you. I can kind of explain what I did in the chapter because the scenes in the chapter change every page or so with what the different characters are doing. So I'll try to explain it as I go along. Chapter 14. We are almost finished with this book. There are only a few more chapters. Everyone was prepared to carry out their part of the plan the next morning. They sat at the table in the kitchen and reviewed it step by step during breakfast. Fred and Nancy had flown in at first light. I guess they're going to be part of the plan. Based on what Brogden had told them, everyone agreed that it was likely that Mackie and Simp would be on the move early in the day. "What can I do?" asked Aunt Gladys. "I want to help." She had slept through the plan making, which had gone late into the night. However, she had awakened well rested and determined to make the best of things. Being in the habit of doing morning chores, she had, albeit with some hesitation, helped John feed Maggie her breakfast. I wonder if Aunt Gladys was just a little scared of doing that. To everyone's surprise, including her own, she took an instant liking to Maggie, and like everyone else, she was so outraged that anyone would want to harm her. So now she wanted to help, but she was having a hard time figuring out how. And that happens sometimes when you have a plan and a lot of people want to be in on the plan. You have to figure out what job everybody will do. Elaine and John looked at each other. "Well, you could help with my part," Elaine offered. Aunt Gladys considered the offer, but she shook her head. "No," she said, "too chaotic." So she doesn't want to do that. John's eyes lit up. "You could help me with my part," he volunteered. "Too messy," she said. "What about helping me, sister?" Aunt Hazel asked. "Oh, I'd rather not," Aunt Gladys replied. "Too painful." This makes me wonder what their plan is and what each person's going to do. And you notice the author of the story hasn't told you. That's me. I didn't tell you what the plan was because I want you to keep reading. All eyes turned to Brogden. "Mine?" he asked hopefully. "No way! Too scary," she stated. So here's the parts of the plan. One is chaotic, one is messy, one is painful, and one is scary. I wonder what this plan is. She hung her head, disappointment spreading like a storm cloud across her face. "I'm so sorry. I did so want to be helpful." John slapped the table, and everybody jumped. "Why didn't I think of it before?" he cried. "Come along, Aunt Gladys. I'll show you what you can do." "One thing before you go," Elaine said, holding her hand in the center of the table. "All hands in," she said. John Brogden and his aunts extended their own hands into the circle until they were piled on top of each other. "We can do this," she said urgently. "We have to do this. Maggie's life is depending on us." Everyone nodded in agreement and vowed to do their best. Brogden guessed correctly. Mackie and Simp got an early start. Fred and Nancy spotted them driving a boat away from the marina with Maggie at the wheel. Simp was in the rear, fiddling with some unusual-looking instruments. "How's that thing work?" Fred and Nancy heard Maggie say. The two men were traveling up and down the lake, starting with the beach line and then moving farther away from it with each pass. "It detects underwater sound waves," Simp called back. "If that lock baby so much as burps, we'll see it right here on this screen," he chuckled. "You see anything?" Maggie asked. "No, not yet," Simp replied, "but soon, I'm sure of it." Fred and Nancy kept far away enough so that Maggie and Simp wouldn't be suspicious, yet close enough to continue watching them. I mean, who's going to suspect anything from ducks out on a lake? That's where they naturally are. Now, this is what I did with this chapter. I will show you. In between each little part, I use these asterisks. Let's see if you can see them. They're right there. And that kind of breaks apart each piece of the plan. So that's what the ducks are doing right now. Let's see what Elaine and John are doing. The sun rose hot, bright, and white when Elaine went outside and pulled the sailboat to the water's edge. She checked that the sail and the lines were in working order. "I don't think I can do this," she said nervously when John joined her on the beach. John smiled. "But that's exactly why this part of the plan will work so well," he told her. Now, if you remember, Elaine is a terrible, terrible sailboat captain. Her skills are not good. If you remember that from a couple chapters ago, but this sailboat seems to be part of the plan. Aunt Hazel, let's see what she's doing, wandered from one beach to another with a jar, searching in the sand. She also looked into tree holes and under clumps of wet leaves as she followed the paths. "Ow!" she snapped. "That hurt! Ow!" Aunt Gladys had been right. That part of the plan was painful. Wonder what's hurting Aunt Gladys. I wonder what she's putting in the jar that's part of the plan. And now John's doing something in the house. Back in the house, a short time later, John scavenged through the pantry, which means he was looking through it. "I know we have more," he said, feeling around for 2 bags on the middle shelf, and then he reached up to the top one. "Bingo!" he called out triumphantly. Wonder what he's getting that's part of the plan. Aunt Gladys sat in front of the secret door that led to Maggie's tank. She spoke through the door to Brogden, who was in the hidden room with Maggie. "Are you okay, Brogden?" she asked him from time to time. "Sure am, Auntie," he called back. "Maggie's a quick learner. You?" "Oh, fine," she said, "but awfully bored." I wonder what her part of the plan is that makes her so bored. And I wonder what Brogden is teaching Maggie that she's learning so quickly. Back to Fred and Nancy. See, every time I switched the characters again, if you see it right there, I used some asterisks. "We're getting quite a workout," Fred declared to Nancy. "Do you think they've seen us?" she asked him. "Not a chance," Fred replied. Now we'll go over to Maggie and Simp. "You get the feeling we're being followed?" asked Maggie. "Shh!" scolded Simp. His eyes were glued to the needle on the monitor. "I think I just saw something." "You did?" Simp studied it intently, watching for anything, even a little blip. "No," he concluded, "nothing. Let's turn her around and go the other way. Try the other way." So they're going up and down the lake, monitoring it for any movement in that water that could be Maggie. Back to Aunt Hazel. The jar was almost full. "Just a few more," said Aunt Hazel. She held the jar up to inspect it, and then she lifted a log. The bottom of it was rotting and crumbling as she peered underneath. Come to Mama, she sang out. Ow! Ow! Something is still hurting Aunt Hazel. Wonder what it could be. With bags under both arms and more in his hands, John assumed his position on the beach. He scanned the sky. Sure hope this isn't the week they visit their cousins at the shore, he said to no one in particular. Not sure what anybody's doing in this chapter. Well, I am because I wrote the book, but I just haven't revealed it yet. Elaine licked her finger and raised it into the air as she tried to figure out which way the wind was blowing. For the 100th time that day, she wished she'd paid closer attention when she'd taken sailing lessons at summer camp as a child. Back to Aunt Gladys. Aunt Gladys went over and over everything in her mind. She also sat very still. From behind the door, she could hear Brogden's delighted voice. Good girl, Maggie, he cried. You've got it. Now to Brogden. Brogden reached into a bucket and threw a handful of pellets in the tank. Yum, Maggie rumbled. Yum. That's right. You've earned your snack, Brogden told her. Let's just hope you can remember what I've taught you. Maggie flashed him a smile, showing all of her teeth, and rumbled with pleasure even louder. Yum. Back to Fred and Nancy. Fred motioned to Nancy to slow down. Something's up, he whispered. Back to Simp and Maggie. We got her, Simp hollered. Look! He wagged a finger at the monitor. The needle was going crazy. Head west, quickly. They're picking up the pace, Nancy noted, beating her wings faster. Don't lose them, Fred hollered back. After practicing, Elaine brought the sailboat up on the beach and sat down on the sand. I guess all we can do now is wait, she muttered nervously to herself. John sat about 20 feet from her on the beach, surrounded by the bags. That's right, he called to her, his voice shaking slightly. Now we wait. Aunt Hazel screwed the lid on the jar for the final time and climbed the tree directly in front of the house. Wonder why she's doing that. She settled down on the porch of a charming treehouse and kept her eyes peeled on the ground below. Nothing to do but wait, she sighed. You all set in there? Aunt Gladys called to Brogden. We're going to give it one more try just to be on the safe side, he replied. You? Just waiting, she sang out, not budging. And that's where we'll stop. John, Elaine, Aunt Hazel, Aunt Gladys, Brogden, they're all waiting to set their plan in motion. And Mackie and Simp think that they know where she is. Please join us again for more reading of Down the Swale. I can't wait to find out what the plan is. I know. And even more important, what's more important? Seeing if the plan works, if they can save Maggie. I certainly hope so. Have a great weekend. Keep on reading and come back tomorrow. Come back the next day. Bye, everybody.